paying them. It's worrying because if you are reliant on one source of income, you are potentially quite vulnerable. So some of them are looking at diversifying their sources of income. Similarly, the enterprising non-profits, so these are charities who have traditionally relied on donations and grants in the past, are equally diversifying their sources of income. They're looking for different sources of income to try to continue to provide the social benefit that they were set up to provide in the first place. So they are prioritizing their social purpose and looking for different sources of income to guarantee that. So it really, this is why I'm very keen on the idea that when you're looking at a particular market, you need to study the specificities of that market. So if it's a market for water or healthcare services or whatever, each is going to be rather different and will give a different answer to that conundrum of sources of income, organisational legal structure, and social purpose. Does that answer your question?
Yes.
Thank you.
What you meant to say is that if the social mission is unclear,
is that for some non-profit organisations, their social purpose, it is so difficult to demonstrate the social impact. A lot of non-profits were set up from a belief, a faith, that, for instance, looking after children who have been abused is a good thing to do in itself. We shouldn't have to demonstrate what is the social impact of that. We should be doing it regardless, because it's the right thing. And so they find it very difficult to move into that enterprising non-profit space, because they find it more difficult to demonstrate the social impact, what is the social good. Therefore, they find it more difficult to attract impact investment and social finance. Do you see what I mean? Really good question. Both the questions. Really scarily good. More.
I study about MDG. A lot of goal has not been
That's right.
achieved. So what about the SDG? What do you think that in the future, in the next 10 years, it should be done at least more than 70% or not?
Well, I think with the balance of opinion on the Millennium Development Goals was something like 50% were reached and 50% were not. And some of those 50% that were not reached, conditions actually got worse. Certainly, if we're looking at climate change, one of the development goals, things will be getting worse, not better. I think that we have to work. We have to work with optimism and a belief that things will improve, whilst at the same time being fully aware of all the barriers to things improving. I believe that there were some opportunities that were missed from the Sustainable Development Goals, especially around, for instance, economic structures, around different forms of economic activity, and around. Overall, I think this is a really positive move that these are in place. And like I said right at the beginning, I think that, they will increasingly be the focus for substantial sources of income, whether it's through trading or through grants and donations. So I don't know how successful they'll be. But I have to hope that they will. It's the only way we can work, is to be hopeful whilst being aware. Yes.
With the big board, right? In Thailand, the government is different in the NDG and SDG at this time. It's different. NDG is nothing in Thailand, but the SDG we have a little movement, and the government take up, the major role and the Prime Minister action. So right now, the National Economics and Social Board, we are the secretariat, right? And what you can say? There are three committee. The first committee is about indicator, and the second committee is about self-sufficiency economy, and the third one is about database.
Oh.
Right, and last time on last Friday, just the first committee about indicator, there are other people, many out of industry, and what should I say, engaged in the goal. Like the first one, I have the document with me. It's a big stuff. In each goal, right? Not only one ministry. We work cross industry.
Yes.
So I hope everything will be happening in Thailand, and right now all government agencies have to adapt their indicator of their workers.
I think the purpose in setting the targets was to drive the development of indicators, and I think that's one of the principal sort of benefits of the goals.
But for the NDG at that time, right, the UN asked the government to, action the NDG, but I think not a lot of government work on that, and they moved to corporate size, so CSR people working. So right now, like our business sector, go beyond the government sector. They have GRI, they have the NDG compass to connect, but right now the government just, begin.
Yeah.
But it's a good signal.
Yeah, no, we are right at the start.
Yeah, good signal.
Yes, thank you for that. Yes.
I'm interested in public sector social enterprise. In particular, maybe our background is from public administration, and we think that social enterprise may be an alternative to reduce the public sector, and so as far as I listen to you, if the state want to establish like social enterprise, so the typology maybe fall to the public sector social enterprise. So it's more like a top-down, approach.
Yes.
You think there are, any caution?
Oh yes.
All right, because it's another approach, and I also looking for, a way to set up a social enterprise under the local government in Thailand. Because in Thailand, as you know, that we get, approaching aging society, and and if we think about provide appropriate service to the age group, right? That is going to be a big burden to the local budget. So I think that this is maybe another way out,
Yes.
for matching, public sector volunteerism, at the local level. But don't sure about the way to set up it. Maybe you can give us more idea, and you have this kind of social enterprise, aging, group in UK or.
There are sorry. So your question is about sort of firstly and secondly, are there any models?
Model.
Yeah.
Case studies.
Case studies. There's plenty. Yeah. So first of all, the issues, and they're really important because they are very difficult issues. So one of the principal reasons why. One of the principal reasons, there are two principal reasons for trying to reduce the size of the public sector. One is the public sector borrowing requirement, the amount of money that is spent on the public sector, and whether that fits with one's international investors and international financial monitors. So whether the IMF or the World Bank are saying you should be, you should be reducing the size of your public sector. It's also an issue for the national credit rating. So whether, and to my mind, it is scandalous that Moody's and Standard & Poor, the two principal agencies who establish the credit worthiness of nation states, they are unaccountable and unanswerable to anybody. And to my mind, that should be rectified. But we are where we are. So one has a nation's credit. So in the UK, because of the political turmoil the country in the UK is currently in, because of the vote to leave the European Union, our credit rating has been reduced, which means that we have to pay more to borrow money. It means that if the government issues bonds, the returns are lower, etc., etc. So that's one reason why governments across the globe most of them are seeking to, because it's the pension arrangements that I benefit from and my generation benefit from will no longer be available. They are very generous, and in the UK, for a health authority or the National Health Service, so the National Health Service in the UK has about 1 million employees. It's one of the largest employers in the world. So that's a very large pension fund and very large pension obligations. So in order to, they're worried about being able to meet their pension obligations. And so they are trying to, and one of the ways of reducing that obligation is to reduce the size of the workforce. And so when in the UK, when the idea of a public sector spin-out or public sector mutual, when these were first proposed, the trade unions were very against them because they saw them as a way of reducing employees' pension entitlements. And that's true. There's no getting around it. That's the truth. Having said that, if a group of community nurses spins out from the health service, forms a workers' co-op, or another form of public sector mutual, they then have they have much greater say over how they provide their pensions, how they split the amount that the employer pays into a pension fund and the amount that an employee pays into a pension fund. So an advantage, and the unions have in the UK have come round to agreeing would not necessarily have the same industrial strength to bargain with the commissioner, the employer. Well, I mean, they wouldn't have to bargain with the employer because they are their own employer. But I mean, one of the big issues, and it is being sort of worked through at the moment, is the commissioning process. So if you move from essentially vertical integration in sort of business management terms, all elements are employed by the one organisation. If you move from that to a system of contracts, it's the management of those contracts that becomes the key issue. And prior to the management of the contracts is is writing the tender, writing the bid documents. How do and one of the big issues in the UK is that the commissioning groups, the commissioners, I've got you, sorry, the commissioners are tending to aggregate a lot of services together to try and reduce their workload. So they are tending, they are putting out for tender very large contracts, and then small social enterprises do not have the capacity to do the work that's required to fill out the tender, to complete the tender. So what's happening is that a lot of the smaller social enterprises and charities, because very often charities, so in the UK we've got a big age-related charity called Age Concern, which is for elderly, which provides services for elderly people. And what they are increasingly doing is developing consortia. So a group of partners who are providing a service. So it may be that some provide specialist services, specialist mental health services for dementia or something like that. Some may provide services in only one community, a day centre, you know. And so then the issue becomes the management of complex partnerships with lots of different organisations with different capabilities, different experience, different interests, and there is an emerging field of study on what is called multi-stakeholder partnerships. Okay, so this is where you have organisations which have got stakeholders who have an interest, you know, a clear legal interest in the management and ownership of an organisation. So examples are very common in the world of social enterprise, because organisations like Fair Trade, Forest Stewardship Council, a lot of those are made up of a lot of different stakeholders, and the ways in which their interests are represented at the top level becomes very important. There is a who published it? I forgot. There is some work emerging on best practice models for multi-stakeholder partnerships. I mean, in the UK, Co-ops UK has a number of is doing some work on this area. There's an organisation called the Office for Public Management in the UK, which is specialising in public sector mutuals, and they're also specialising in looking at what are called social impact funds, which you might have heard of, which are investment vehicles, investment bond, where the social impact whether the social impact is achieved or not determines the level of return on the bond. A bit complicated. Does that answer your question?
Yes.
My name is Manipon. I'm an independent researcher working in the arts in Thailand. I used to work with a non-profit organization for the arts for many years and cannot sustain themselves because we couldn't rely on public funding or grants locally or even internationally. It's quite difficult. So I'm trying to find a kind of a new model for combining the arts or creative sector with the social enterprise. Do you have any good models or best practice, or it's kind of like interesting or trend in the UK at the moment?
Yes, it's a very good question. So your question is about sort of ideas, models, or best practice for arts organisations who are seeking to be both a social and a creative enterprise. And yes, no, there are some very good ones. There's an arts organisation based in London called Make Believe Arts. I can't remember the other sources of income that they have, but they have been very successful at developing a dive. I think with arts organisation, it's really, from what I have seen, the successful organisations have a more diverse than do a lot of other enterprises, because it is more difficult. A lot of them will still get some grant income. A lot of them will still try and get donations, as well as trading and contracts with organisations. There is another arts-based organisation which is quite specialised. That's called Julie's Bicycle. You heard of that? Yeah. And so they provide environmental sustainability services and certification to arts organisations, because the main arts funding body in the UK, Arts Council, well, the main one in England, Arts Council England, have specified that all the arts bodies that it funds must demonstrate efforts to improve their environment, their carbon footprint, their environmental sustainability. And Julie's Bicycle provides. So I mean, that's that's another source of income, is a sort of certification service. If there's a niche, if there's a good sort of niche that you can fit into. Does that answer your question?
No.
Hello.
Yeah, I just asked the same question of her, that do you have any a good model that will work the social enterprise in the publishing?
In publishing?
Yeah.
Oh. That I know of in publishing. Am I right? Well, no, I'll withdraw that. There are two. I think there are two basic models. One is employee ownership, because I think one of the issues for fairly large publishing organisations, sort of medium-sized publisher, is keeping hold of your talent. Because a good editor is a good editor and will find a job somewhere else. So having some way of sort of maximising your employees' loyalty to the firm, whether that's through employee ownership or whatever, a workers' co-op or a partnership. I mean, that's another legal form, is where every employee is a partner. That's one model. The other one is there's a publishing company called Greenleaf, who they published one of those two textbooks on responsible business education. Okay, and from what I know about them, I haven't looked very deeply into them, but from what I know of them, they would be classed as a social business. Their name, Greenleaf, is sort of signalling their environmental credibility. That is another way of sort of trying to lock in your income by establishing yourself as the sort of outlet for environmentally sustainable publications. I mean, not just in the operations, but the books about environmental sustainability. I mean, the other models are sort of old-fashioned. So another model for social again, it's social business, would be to set up a charitable foundation which concentrates on something that is of central interest to that publisher. So, for instance, you might be a publisher that concentrates on children's issues, the care of children. So, academic work as well as children's fiction, you know. And you might set up a philanthropic foundation which then funds whether charitable or or other work for the benefit of children. So that would be a different model, you know. But it's quite old-fashioned, but it works, you know. It works. Again, the advantages of different are varied from each country, and of course in a lot of countries there is no legal recognition of a social enterprise at all, and the only distinction is between a for-profit company or a charity or not-for-profit. And so in those countries it's very different. Does that answer your question?
Oh yeah,
Good.
thank you very much.
Yes. So that uses the income gained from restaurant and a hotel. Sorry?
The one in Seoul.
Yes. Yes. And then there is Doitong as well, I think. Yeah. No, there's and the what was it called? The ecotourism one, local living, I think. Sorry? Yeah. There's quite a few examples. Yeah, a lot of examples.
The Thai government right now, the graphic or SEF being considered by the Senate, and the definition of SE, they concentrate that if you pay the dividend not more than 30%, you will be qualified as an SE. I think that by having the limitation on dividend payment would not bring more investors to join the SE in the future, or would be unfair for that definition that if you pay dividend more than 30%, you will not get the benefit from, let's say, from the tax incentive or other benefit from the government.
So I don't know too much about the proposed law, but you're saying that if they pay, if they don't pay more than 30% of their net profits as a dividend on shares, they qualify as a social enterprise. That's an interesting model, and it will be interesting to see how that's developed.
Debating right now.
Yes, I think that one of the key issues in the UK around the definition, and it doesn't feature in the diagram that I showed, but so in the UK we have a specific legal form called the community interest company, and one of the features, one of the aspects, the key aspects of the community interest company is what's called an asset lock. So the regulation for a community interest company says that if the enterprise is wound up, you know, is dissolved, the assets of the enterprise have to be given to another community interest company or a recognised social enterprise or a charity.
So it's transferred.
Yeah, but it cannot be sold on the open market. The assets cannot be sold on the open market. Okay, so there is a lock on the disposal of the assets, and some people have argued that that is a disincentive to investors, and I don't know. I think the research has not actually been done about that. From what you say, the definition that's being proposed in Thailand is a lot looser, and obviously it would allow for the assets to be sold to anybody. So I mean this is one of the issues for a social enterprise, is how do you guarantee through the structure of the enterprise, how do you guarantee the social impact, the social value? And if a hedge fund can buy the enterprise and then break up the assets and sell them and dissolve the company, one way of sort of trying to guarantee that is to set up particular projects which have their social mission. That answers the question. Thank you. Okay. Were there any other questions? Well, thank you all so much for being so patient. Thank you.